Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Reading in the Red this Monday morning. And it's a fine Monday morning. It's a little bit of drizzle, but I don't think it will rain too much. And it's going to be a blessing because it's getting warmer. Luke chapter 9 and verse 26. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and the holy angels. Jesus says, for whoever is ashamed of me. And the idea of being ashamed is embarrassed. So there's an awkwardness, a sense of a pregnant silence when God has declared something through Jesus. And there's almost like a conflict, a displeasure about the thing that Jesus has just declared. And so inside of us, there is a reaction. And it's the reaction, our first reaction often, that reveals who we really are and what we really think. And then the management of that reaction in terms of what we would do about what we now know with regards to what God has said. Because before we knew, we didn't know. Therefore, we wasn't responsible. But as soon as we know something, we become responsible of the something we now know. And to disregard it or to push it aside or to even be in disagreement with it is to represent being ashamed of it. Is to say, I don't want nothing to do with that. That's not what I'm about. Even though Jesus is the one that said it, if we are ashamed of it, then we are setting ourselves up for the implications of this verse. Because Jesus says, if you're ashamed of me, in effect, by the things that I say, by my words, the revelation that I bring, then when I come back, and I'm coming back, with my glory of my Father and with the holy angels, when I come back, I'm going to readdress that in terms of how you responded to me when you were responsible for those words, because you now know them. I'm going to address that to you, and I'm going to be ashamed of you. So if you don't want Jesus to be ashamed of you in terms of the way you reacted to the things that he said, then you need to take note, serious note, sincere note of the thing that God has said in Jesus. So as you gain revelation from God through the scriptures, you gain an insight into what God is about. And your reaction to what you've now gained is really important. And if your first initiation of response is, I'm ashamed of it, I'm not going to agree with it, unless you wrestle towards cooperation and acceptance of the very thing that Jesus is saying, then Jesus is saying to you that as you are now representing that you're ashamed of what I'm saying, so when I return, I'm going to be ashamed of you in terms of the responsibility that you reflected when you heard this word. So as you rejected me, Jesus is saying, so I'm going to reject you. And we don't want that. We don't want Jesus to reject us, because all of our lives is going to be tested at the judgment. And we want as much of us to be saved as we possibly can. And we want as much of us to go into eternity and be with God as we possibly can. And the only way that's going to be a reality is if we respond to his word without being embarrassed by his word. Cooperation. He says this, if you love me, then you will obey me. And it's the obedience that God is looking for, not a sense of mental acknowledgement. God has given us a responsibility when we know to be obedient. Thank you for joining me on this Monday morning. May you be blessed and embrace God's love every day. Amen. See you tomorrow.